get started. Cool. Okay, so just to talk a little bit about what my office does for those of you that haven't worked with us before. And so the Office of National Fellowships, like fellowships is kind of a nebulous term. Sometimes people kind of just equate it to a scholarship, and sometimes the term is used interchangeably. But essentially, how I define a fellowship is that it's going to be a scholarship that has some sort of tangible learning outcome, whether that is research that you're doing, or it's an internship, or you're working on your thesis, or studying a foreign language, whatever it is, by the end of the experience, you've grown or developed your skills in some way. And so our office works with students like yourself that are applying to these different opportunities. And so we work with you on your applications. We help find opportunities that align with your interests. But essentially, what a fellowship is that it can be, well, a lot of things. But it's developing your skills, your knowledge, and helping you reach those academic or professional goals that you may have for yourself. And so Gilman, like many of the other opportunities that we work with, are typically nationally competitive awards, but it's ones that we have a very high success rate with. So for students that are working with our office in particular. And so the way in which our office mainly helps you through this application process is that we provide a space for you to sit and reflect on your experiences, both your personal experiences and your academic experiences, and we help you incorporate that into your essay and make sure that your application is as competitive as possible. So not only, like I said earlier, do we help you identify opportunities that align with your interests, but we help you through the application process, not just in reviewing your essays, but make sure that we're managing all components, and helping you. You don't have to do this in this case for Gilman, but also helping you navigate the process of identifying recommenders that can support your application and how you might reach out to them. But we'll get into all the requirements for Gilman in just a second. But first, just to highlight what the scholarship is, and kind of what mission they've had over the last few years. So these numbers aren't as current as they could be because of the pandemic. We haven't had students that were recipients last year that have yet traveled, so we haven't been able to update this information. But the Benjamin A. Gilman Scholarship was created to help students who may otherwise not be able to study abroad, study abroad. And so they look at students who may identify as first generation. They look for students who come from a lower SES background or students with disabilities. And so students who receive a federal Pell Grant are eligible. But if you look at the numbers, they show that a huge percentage of these students, and these I think are going to be a little bit different at FSU than they are nationally, but a very significant percentage of these students have identify as first generation or have never traveled out of the country before. Or would not have been able to study abroad had it not been for the funding that they got from the Gilman Scholarship. And so with Gilman, you can receive up to $5,000 to apply towards any study abroad program, as long as it meets the basic criteria for Gilman, which we'll get into in just a moment. But as long as your program is at least 3 weeks long and counts for academic credit, you can find programs in Latin and South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, for internships, for academic programs, for cultural exchange programs, for really anything, as long as it fits into those criteria that I mentioned. If your program happens to be focused on studying a critical need language, which there are about 15 as listed by Gilman and some of these other scholarships that are critical need, so Mandarin, Japanese, Arabic, Urdu, Punjabi, and Russian, many others. We can get into all of the specifics if that is an interest of yours. But if you're studying a language that falls into that category, you can receive up to $3,000 more to apply towards your program. So for a total of $8,000. Moving on from there. So to be eligible for the Gilman Scholarship, so not only do you need to be receiving a federal Pell Grant, not just eligible for, but you need to be receiving it. You need to be a U.S. citizen, and you need to be an undergraduate student. So you need to be enrolled as a student at Florida State during your international program. But Gilman is open to students that are wanting to study in the fall, spring, summer, or academic year. So it's pretty flexible to whatever your schedule is. Um, you don't, so this Gilman deadline is October 6th. And that is for students that plan to study abroad this spring, summer, or following fall. So you don't necessarily need to have been accepted into the program yet to qualify for Gilman. You just need to know generally like when you're going to apply. So what you're pitching to Gilman right now is, hey, this is my plan. I mean, if you're studying abroad in the spring semester or you plan to, then it needs to be a little bit more concrete. But if it's something that's not until the summer or the fall, then what you're pitching to Gilman is like, this is my plan. This is what I hope to do. And if you receive the funding, you can just update Gilman on what that timeline looks like if it happens to change or if the program changes. Um, the US Department of State, you can go onto their website and find whether your country that you plan on traveling to is listed as a level 1, 2, 3, or 4. Gilman recognizes that right now there is a much higher percentage of 3s and 4s than there would be if we weren't in a global pandemic. And so don't let that deter you from applying to a country that would otherwise be, a level 1 or a level 2 in just a more normal circumstance. But we can talk about how that is continuing to evolve and change and how we can best plan for that maybe later when we're taking questions. But when Gilman is reviewing applications, this is what they're typically looking for. So when it comes to academic preparedness, that is relative to your program that you hope to study in. I think a very simple example is if your study abroad program happened to be I'm traveling to France and I'm taking chemistry coursework. I'm taking, organic chem and organic chem lab or whatever it is. And a Gilman review committee sees that you've performed very poorly in all of your like chemistry courses up to that point, then they may question whether you're capable of now doing this abroad. It's obviously a very simple example, but relative to what it is that you hope to do, how have you prepared for this? How do your transcripts reflect that, or how do your other extracurricular involvement reflect your ability to do this? The diversity of background and experience is going to obviously be unique to every applicant. And so some of these essays, the first essay in particular, is going to ask you to delve into that experience. So through your lived experiences, through your story, how can you show the reader that you have the skills and talents to be successful in this, whatever it is that you're proposing or whatever program you're hoping to participate in, or how has some of the challenges you've overcome made you even more apt for this program that you are applying to. The destination is referring to Gilman's preferred regions. The majority of students that are studying abroad, this is in general, not just for Gilman, but are traveling to Western Europe. So looking at, England, France, Spain, Germany, Italy, and Gilman still sends the majority of students that apply to that region. But it's a kind of a little plus on your application if you're applying to a program that happens to take place in Eastern Europe, in Southeast Asia, or in the continent of Africa. Those three areas are preferred by Gilman because so few students take advantage of study abroad opportunities in those regions relative to other places. That shouldn't be your only reason for applying to said region, but if you happen to find a program there that does align with your interests and your passions, then maybe it's something you should seriously consider. But Gilman is also looking for the impact to the community. That is both the community that you are traveling to and the community that you are coming back to as you define it. And so that's going to be the focus of your second essay, which we get into a little bit later. But Gilman wants to see, so when you travel to this country, this city, or this place, what is the impact that you are making? How are you engaging with the people and the culture? And how would you take that, that greater effort to engage with the area that you're in? And then when you return, you define the community that you hope to impact. That can either be your community in Tallahassee, that could be your community back home in your hometown, that could be some clubs and organizations that you're involved in, or that could be a host of communities. But identify that community, and then talk about how you're presenting, how you're engaging with them, how you're maybe sharing with them your experience or what you did with the Gilman Scholarship, and maybe how could they navigate that process as well. The last criteria, the critical need language, that is just if your program is focused on studying a critical need language. Otherwise, you don't need to worry about that. Okay, so in thinking of how do I get started, I think the easiest thing to do right now is just go to the website. Start reading a little bit more about this opportunity. You can look at the prompts. You can look at what they're asking you to write. You can find helpful videos. You can find testimonies from previous recipients. But just to get an idea for what this opportunity is. But the most important thing right now is to find a viable program. So as long as it meets Gilman's criteria, which is at least 3 weeks long, it's international, obviously, and it can count for academic credit. That's what I want you to focus on right now, is to find a viable program. Because once you find that, then we can talk about how does this fit into the prompts? How can we find enough detail to write about this opportunity in your essay? And where can we go from here? Typically, I think the types of study abroad programs that you can find break down into 3 different categories. They're your standard academic programs, which you can see would be Florida State international programs, Florida State's global exchange program. Those tend to be focused on courses or classwork that you are going to be taking in an international setting. The main difference between those international programs at FSU tends to send you abroad with a bunch of other students, a bunch of other Florida State students, and they have typically a Florida State Study Center that you are staying at. So it can be a little bit more like I'm getting my toes wet into what it means to study abroad. And that does not diminish the value of those opportunities. They have some excellent programs, but you have that safety net of I'm surrounded by my Florida State community, and then from there I can continue to branch out. Global exchange is through the Center for Global Engagement, and they have, like I said, those academic programs abroad, but you may be the only Florida State student there. Not that you'd be the only American there, but you may be one of 2 or 3 Florida State students. So it's a little bit more autonomous. They will, of course, provide you housing. All of the funding that you receive as a Florida State student would transfer over there. But if you're looking for a more immersive experience, then global exchange may be a good opportunity for you. So like I said, the first category of study abroad programs tends to be those academic programs. The second category would be your internship programs. So I'm looking for work experience or, a hands-on opportunity that would allow me to gain relevant skills to my field. And so Global Scholars, I think, is a really excellent example for that. That program is run through the Center for Undergraduate Research and Academic Engagement, or the CRE office. Global Scholars, the application is typically due around November 1st, but they partner with an organization called OMPRCASH, which is spelled OMPRAKASH. And so through OMPRCASH, you can find internships and opportunities in many of Gilman's preferred regions, but opportunities that would allow you to, like I said, develop that skill set, work with populations or people that you are wanting to maybe work with in the future, or find, I guess, quote unquote, a non-traditional study abroad experience. And so if you're interested in an internship opportunity, I would start with Global Scholars, but you all maybe also be able to find opportunities through the Career Center in terms of internship. And this year is a little bit different in that Gilman is trying to be as flexible as possible to accommodate students who are trying to study abroad, but maybe their program is canceled because of COVID, or they're still a little bit unsure right now. So Gilman is also allowing some students to find internships that engage with an international community, even if that is something in Tallahassee or within the United States. Again, that's something we can talk more about on a one-on-one meeting. But look into those opportunities if those sound interesting. And then the third category is going to be more of your cultural exchange program. So I'm not taking classes, I'm not participating in an internship, but I am traveling to this place to engage with the people, the culture, see the sights, eat the food, just have a good time. And a good example of that would be the Beyond Borders at Florida State. And so that is also through the Center for Global Engagement. They have two programs, one of which does not qualify because it is only a week long and Gilman requires 3 weeks. But they have a 3-week program in Germany. And so what's attractive about that opportunity, besides just the, traveling to Germany and getting to engage and see the sites, and, it's very well structured from what I've been told from students who have done it. But you also host German college students. And so there's about a week where they, tour Florida in the Southeast, but then you host them in Tallahassee at Florida State University. And then conversely, when you travel, they host you. And so getting to meet college students your age can be just a really interesting experience to see how their college experience may differ or be similar to yours. These numbers down at the bottom, so again, they haven't been updated because we didn't have students travel abroad this past summer, but the national acceptance rate for Gilman tends to be around 23%. Students that work with our office in the last few years, since 2016 specifically, are being accepted more, roughly about 2.5 times that, which is really impressive. This is an award you don't have to work with us. You don't have to work with ONF on. You can apply completely on your own. And I wish you the best of luck if that is what you choose. But those students are actually being accepted below the national average at about like 17.5%, which still isn't bad in the grander scheme of things. But wanted to list that just to really emphasize, work with us or find someone that can support you, because you have nothing to lose, but you have a lot to gain. So reach out to me. I'll have my information at the end, as well as some of my colleagues as well. Now, what Gilman asks of you is more or less these 2 essays that you need to write. There's no letters of recommendation. It is just the application itself, which is kind of a deconstructed resume in these 2 essays. So the first, the statement of purpose, is going to be all about where you're going and what you are doing. And so it's kind of an amalgamation of that, but also with your personal statement, but they still call it a statement of grant purpose. Now, I tend to recommend, and when you're thinking about this essay, it's kind of a cliche analogy, but think of it like you're building a sandwich, and where the bread is going to be your personal statement elements, and everything in the middle is going to be the program and where you're going and what you're doing and why you're doing it. And so if we're eating the sandwich from top to bottom, that first layer is going to be maybe more of those formative experiences for yourself. So think of the experiences that have led you to this point, or have led you to this program that you're pursuing, or what relevant story about yourself can really introduce what it is you're proposing for Gilman. Once you're able to do that, then, okay, present, this is the program I'm going to, this is where it is, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it, all of that. And then that final layer, or the bottom layer of bread, is going to be that future direction. So get back into your personal statement and in some ways, and tell me, so where are you going from this? Or how is this funding from Gilman going to make a significant impact beyond just, I need the money? Like an example of that, a student who may be applying for an unpaid internship abroad can maybe speak to, well, I really value this experience. It's going to develop my skills, but I'm giving up a summer's worth of income. I won't be able to work over the summer, and so this application would be really significant in allowing me to engage fully. So to kind of recap, begin with your personal narrative and what has led you here, delve into the program, and then find a way to conclude and show the reader where you're going as a result of this program. So those 7,000 characters, that equates to about 1.5 pages, single space. And so it may sound like a lot, but it goes by very quickly. The second essay, 6,000 characters, that's going to be about 1.33 pages. But the community impact essay, as I was saying earlier, that is both the impact that you're going to make in the community that you're traveling to, and the impact that you're going to make in the community that you return to. And so the way that Gilman frames it is, so you're going to be operating as a citizen diplomat is their language. So thinking of you in this space, how are you going to engage with the people in the culture, but also why is someone like yourself or from the experiences that you share with Gilman, why is it important for someone like yourself to be in this space or to be doing this type of work? Or how do you define what it means to be an American, or what is the American experience? That's going to be something different for everyone. And so reflect on some of the identities that you bring to the table, and why it's important for those identities to be represented in this space. Again, that's something we can kind of dig into a little bit more in a one-on-one meeting. But for the second half of that essay, so for example, I've worked with students that have talked about their involvement within like the Southern Scholarship Foundation at Florida State, which is an organization that brings together a lot of students who do receive Pell Grants, and provides them with free housing. And so they talk about us. So being involved in this organization, not only do I have access to a lot of students who are also eligible for Gilman, but I, in my role, some students hold different positions, but I am able to recruit. I'm able to present. I'm able to share flyers. I'm able to more easily tell these students about what my experience was and how they can have a similar experience or one that aligns with their interests. Other students have talked about going back to their former high schools to present to their former peers about not just getting to college, but once they get to college, this is how you can engage and pursue opportunities that maybe students of more financial means don't even have to think twice about, but this is how you can navigate it and find funding. Gilman on their website gives you a lot of examples on what students have done in the past, and so take some time to go through and read that. I also have sample essays I'd be more than happy to share with you of students that have done that well in the past. These deadlines, I kind of already talked about this a little bit earlier, but essentially at the time that you apply, you're applying for a program that begins a year out. And so this October 6th deadline is for programs that begin between January 1st of 2021 and December 31st of 2021. So if your program begins within that time frame, then you should apply. Because, if you get it, great. Then you find out in January that you have funding for a program that may not start until next fall. And so at the very least, you can be budgeting during that time, or you can also be applying to other scholarships to maybe supplement the full cost if Gilman doesn't cover that already. If you don't receive it, then what you can do is just reapply in March for the same program. You can just make edits to your application, and just improve it, and you essentially have kind of a 2-for-1 chance to receive funding. So for that March deadline, it's just within between May and April of the following year, April 30th of 2022. So if that's your time frame, then you're still eligible. So my recommendation is, even if your program doesn't start till the summer or fall, I would still try to take this next month and use your time very intentionally to apply. And like I said, best case, you receive your funding early. Worst case, you can just apply again, but you don't have to start from square one. You can just improve the application that you already developed. That's kind of it for Gilman. And so these next opportunities can kind of just, I'll breeze through, and then we can just have some time for questions. Freeman Asia is not due until the end of the spring semester. And so Freeman Asia is essentially, it's almost the same as Gilman in a lot of aspects, but they have a GPA requirement, which Gilman doesn't, and they have a longer duration. So Freeman Asia is looking at students that are studying abroad for 8 weeks, not 3. But this can be an example of, say, you apply for a program in Southeast Asia, and say you receive Gilman, but it's not enough to cover the full cost of your program, then this could be one of those opportunities that you apply to later in the spring to cover the full cost. Or maybe this is one that you could apply to in subsequent semesters or subsequent years. If you want to, say, use Gilman for one opportunity, use Freeman Asia for another opportunity, but just gives you an opportunity to engage in programs in locations that students don't utilize as much as they should. The other opportunities that I would encourage you to look at, so my office works with students from their very first semester until their very last semester at Florida State, and there are opportunities that you are eligible for all 4 years. If you're interested in language study, and so earlier I mentioned that, so Gilman has its flat, like this is the Gilman scholarship, but then they also have the critical language Gilman scholarship that is up to that additional $3,000, so up to $8,000 to study abroad. There is also the critical language scholarship, which is it's under the same umbrella in terms of the organization that runs all of these, but it's its own opportunity. And so this is another one where maybe you could stack, or you could use these for different opportunities. But the critical language scholarship is purely a summer program that is 2 months long, and it's just very intensive language study. So not only are you taking coursework, you are paired with a conversation partner throughout this entire time, and you engage with the community through other structured activities. So through a homestay in many cases. So you're getting the language both in an academic setting and an informal setting, and they market this to students as an opportunity that increases your proficiency in 2 months, the same that it would in taking like a year's worth of coursework. And so if you're interested in language study, would love to talk about it more. This is one, the critical language scholarship is not due until November, but obviously the Gilman critical language scholarship is due October 6th. Humanity in Action is one that it is for students that are interested in human rights and social justice. You are eligible from your sophomore year until 2 years after graduating. It is a fully funded summer program to study these topics of human rights and social justice, both from a historical and contemporary perspective. So they have destinations in Europe. I believe they have 4 or 5 placements in Europe. And then they have a placement in Atlanta called the John Lewis Fellowship. Now, this program takes into account the region that you're studying in, and so for a lot of these destinations in Europe, the framework that they work from is the Holocaust, and both its, like I said, historical and contemporary impact on many different communities. But of course, they bring in more recent topics as well, and so you have site visits, you have guest speakers, and so you really immerse in the place that you're in. And then for the program in Atlanta, their framework is from the civil rights movement, again, historical and contemporary, with site visits, guest speakers, and all of that. The Curtis Scholarship, I believe, has an age cap, so I think you have to be younger than 21 to be eligible, but it's for students who come from a lower SES background who may be interested in topics regarding social justice and regarding hunger. And so there's a program, they send you for 10 days to South Africa to engage with the community there. And then they fund a week-long excursion to New York City to participate in Global Citizen, which is the organization that created this scholarship, to participate in their national conference. The US-UK Fulbright Summer Institute, that is only for freshmen and sophomores. I think they have a 3.7 GPA minimum, so it's pretty high. If you are in your first or second year, know that your GPA is still fluctuates greatly. So if you're somewhere close to that and you do really well this semester, you may be able to get up to that cap by the time that it's due, which is in January. So you still have this semester, but that is for fully funded summer program at different institutions within the United Kingdom. Each institution has a different focus, whereas some look at human rights and social justice, others look at the arts, others look at theater, others look at global warming and its impact. And so you can find one that aligns with your academic interests, but also allows you to just engage in a new place, a new country. The last program, the Fulbright U.S. Student Program, is one of those awards that that you apply to as a senior, as a rising senior. These are kind of our upper echelon awards because they fund like a full year abroad. They can fund a graduate study program. They can fund a master's degree. Fulbright can fund a year of teaching English at an international university or high school or elementary school. It funds a lot of different opportunities, but its main focus is cultural exchange. Just the means by which you're doing that are either teaching, engaging in research, pursuing a graduate degree. And so this is one that I would love to talk to you more about, but this is also an opportunity that has said overtly, we want more Gilman scholars to apply for this opportunity. And so applying to Gilman as a lower division student can be an excellent opportunity for you that can hopefully build your resume towards one of these postgraduate opportunities like Fulbright that we work with. But if you're a junior or senior, I don't like you can still be eligible whether you have Gilman on your application or not. It's just with our office, we like to show how a lot of these opportunities are interconnected and how an experience through one opportunity can significantly boost your resume as you're considering something else. And so if this is your first year, we would love to work with you for the next 3 to 4 years. Or if this is your last year, we can still hit the ground running and find a good opportunity for you. If you would like to write down contact information, again, my name is Jesse. My colleagues Paige and Natalia are also available to work with you on Gilman. Craig and Josh are currently unavailable because they're working with other fellowships and other programs. But between the three of us, we will definitely be able to find time over the next month to work with you on your application. And that work typically takes the form of a weekly meeting where we review your essays, give you feedback, and just help give you direction for what you need to do the following week. But like I said, a month, it's coming up close, but it's still plenty of time to put together an application. What I would do first is find that program that interests you. And from there, we can talk about the essays and how this fits into your overall application. So that is all I have to say. Thank you for listening to me for so long. Would love to answer any questions that you have either about Gilman or these other opportunities, or just about study abroad in general. And